All right. So, welcome to this month's office hours. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Mandy. I'm a senior e commerce analyst at Staples Canada. So, I'm coming from St. John's, Newfoundland. And this is my fourth time as an analytics champion. And I will pass it off to everyone else to introduce themselves. Bjorn, you want to go next?
Hey guys, I am Björn. I'm living in Switzerland countryside. I work for Valtech as a technical consultant for all things Adobe, analytics, web SDK, tag management, and so forth. CDP as well. So first year as analytics champion from my side. I have been an experienced lead community advisor now for 2 years in a row, and yeah, looking forward. Passing over to Bana.
Yeah. Mm. Hey, bro. I'm Bala. So I'm working for Air India. So I'm almost working in all Adobe suite, Adobe Analytics, CG, Adobe Campaign, AEP, RTCDP. So everyone, I have some 15 plus years of experiences. So I am part of this Adobe suite for a long time, almost from 2014. Yeah, that's it from me. Yeah, Dan.
Hi, I'm Dan. I work for IMS. I'm a lead insights data personalization and optimization specialist. I have around 14 years worth of experience in Adobe Analytics and Adobe Launch, and also have experience with Target and CJ as well.
Awesome. So this session is being recorded. It's just the speaker's audio and video. The chat is not recorded itself, but this session will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards if anybody wants to review it. And we have some pre-submitted questions that we will go through. But if you have any questions that you want us to answer, feel free to put them in the chat at any time, and we can always answer your questions as well. So I will share my screen. And the first question that we have is creating a classification. How does it look like and how to apply in Workspace? So I think one of you guys added some comments already. Um, who wants to start?
I can, if you want. So to use classifications to begin with, they are just like normal dimensions, and once they are set up, they'll appear in the menu on the left-hand side there under dimensions, and you can use them. To create them, there are a few different methods. There is the legacy method, which isn't really noted down in here because it will be gone in a year's time. But then there is the current method using classification sets. Um, can I control this, or do you want to run through and show a
Yeah, I
demo of how
can.
to go it? So if you go to, yeah, you've already gone. If you go to classification sets and components in the menu, um, you will need to have a certain level of rights, which come from the Adobe admin section first to be able to create them. But once you have those level rights, you'll be able to see the option in the menu and be taken to this page. Um, you will see a list of any existing classification sets that are present. Those can be edited, or if you need to create a new one, you can click new, and there is a window that you fill in a couple of bits of details, and then it'll get added to this list. So if you can click new and create a new one. So yeah, you give it a name, descriptions, just best practice, uh, email address for the person if there are any issues, and you can choose the type. Um, Primary is for your dimensions, which you set in Adobe Analytics, and a lookup is going to be a classification of a classification that's already set up. And then you select your report suite and your dimension that you want to classify. So if you click save, and that gets added to the top there. And once you click Here you can then add in your classification values. So you give it a name for all the different classifications you want. You can add as many as you want. And then this will then allow you to generate a template which you can download, which will create a CSV file which will have the key and the value you want to be uploading. And then once you fill that in with the information you want, where the key is the value of the dimension that you are classifying. So for example, if you had SKU, a product SKU, you could then add in the classifications based off that SKU. So you'd have the different classifications for it. So where the product type and stuff like that. Once you've generated and input that data, you can save that and you can manually upload it just by clicking on the upload, or you can set up in Adobe location, which you can then FTP it or use Amazon Web Services as buckets to just upload the data there. So then it's all automatic. So that is basically the standard way of doing classifications. There is also classification rule builders. So if you have a classification where you're passing all the information in a single string and you want to break it out, or you have a value which falls into another set, a greater classification, you can create rules for them. Again, you go to admin, and then there'll be classification rule builder. Click on that, you'll see the screen that you just saw. You can add a new one, and that'll take you to this screen, and it'll just be blank, or you can see an existing one and edit an existing one. If you are editing in an existing one, when you do edit it, it will deactivate it. So you've got to remember at the end to reactivate the classification. But you select the report suite and variable. So just there, you will see a link, and you can add in as many of many report suites and variables as needed, as long as the classification values match. And then once you've done that, click save, and then you can add the rules. There are 3 or 4 different rule types. So starts with, ends with, contains, and then regular expression. And you can create your classification and then set it the value here. Once you're happy with the rules, you can then test the rule set. So if you click on test rule set just there, thank you. This will allow you to then upload values and see how that classification is going to go and classify everything for you. So if you click, that's going to process for a bit.
It's already running.
Brilliant.
There
you go. And you can see then how this string or this value is then being split into its different classification sets. Once you're happy with that, you can go back to the rule set, you can activate it. Processing time depends on how much data you have and when you process it. So it typically takes a few hours to 24 hours. With classifications, you do have a look back window as well, which is up to 6 months, and that will reclassify it. So you can have you can go and classify data retrospectively as well. So if it's captured and you haven't done anything for a month, you can then reclassify it, and it will go and change it. Are there any questions? Because I realize I've ran through that very quickly.
I think that was a pretty comprehensive explanation of classifications. One thing I will add is I believe they are eventually bringing the rule builder to classification sets, because it does say that this rule builder is going to be deprecated, but they haven't actually done it yet. So for the rule builder, you still have to use the legacy, but eventually they'll have it in the classification sets as well. So everything will be in one place.
Yeah.
Maybe also
So
worth mentioning, I think the new setup is also allowing then multiple report suites to be chosen at the same time, where I think in the past kind of needed to or that configure them separately, right? So it gives you a bit of a extra flexibility, but you can basically, as long as the values contained in those dimensions are actually the same, it should actually work reliably.
Yeah. Yeah, so it does allow that. In the legacy versions, it allowed you to do it across multiple report suites, but you wouldn't be able to edit them individually, or you wouldn't be able to edit them as a group unless it was the exact same dimension. Where now you can add the classification to different dimensions in different report suites, all at the same time.
yeah. So maybe if I wanted to add, so in the airline we mostly use this classification for our product keys. So especially this rule builder, the processing rules was pretty easy because our keys were very structured way. But we usually go for the manual approach for the campaign related keys, because all those campaigns, the keys will be unstructured. You don't know the value of the keys. It will be like A, X, Y, Z, something it will be. So we have to get those campaign name for what purpose it was executed. Then we have to go for the manual approach. But in the legacy type, particularly on the template also, if you change something on the template, it won't import properly. Also, I think this classification set is making our job pretty easy. Also, the automate ways are there. So mostly we are dealing with a huge file size, particularly within. So that's why we always prefer this processing rules. If there is when a campaigns are when huge campaigns are while we are running in multiple channels, this manual approach is the only one we are relying. But I think this classification set. But again, this is something we have to work with our campaign team, work with the multiple stakeholder to make this process pretty easy, pretty streamlined. Then only the report, it will be instantly available for the report. Yeah, but it's an interesting topic. Actually, I like classification. Even that too, the same classifications are pretty interesting and very challenges also in many times. But we
I mean,
progressed a lot now.
sometimes you may also want to onboard data that should not be visible, like from the website or in the data layer. Like if you're having like some specific margins on products that make your life as an analyst a tiny bit easier to really do some calculations that not should not be publicly available. Then you can always upload this and
Correct,
can
correct.
simply have the data at
And
hand.
one more thing, our account we optimized. We don't want to those days all our billing, so many things based on the image request. So to reduce the image request call, to reduce it to populate multiple dimension, we were relying on classification a lot. uh,
Yeah, we do that. So I've worked for a few different e-commerce sites, and we do that with our products all the time. We only pass the actual SKU number on the website, and then we use classifications for all of the metadata, the hierarchy, everything else.
I think that is a question.
Yeah, to answer Maria's question, classification function, to set it up and build them, it's more of an admin section. Like you can create different user profiles with different levels of permissions, and you can create a user group which will have like read-only access plus classification, but typically it's only given to admins. But then to use the dimensions that are created in the report, that will be just as a standard dimension. If you've got access to that dimension, you'll have access to the classification values that come with it. So it depends on what you mean by the functionality being available. To use it as and have access to the data, then that is typically just given with the dimension when you have access to that dimension. But if you want to generate and build your own, you will need to have access to the admin section and the admin privileges in Adobe Analytics.
I'm also just going to reiterate what Sumit mentioned. When using the new classification set for small file uploads via the browser, once the setup is complete, you no longer need a classification file with the Saint header. The template itself will provide the key and metadata, allowing you to upload without the Saint header, which that's a interesting change that I noticed as well when I first started using the classification sets. It doesn't have all those header rows like the legacy one does.
I think it's also like Adobe is more or less migrating the existing classification rules that you're having to the classification sets, right? You don't really need to do anything by yourself, correct? I guess the compatibility is like really needs to be in focus. And as I see it, or as I understood it, you don't need to do anything. It's just that the old interface will disappear and you will need to go into the new classification set interface.
Yeah, I've heard everything should transfer over automatically, but I think it's still a good idea to
Cross stack,
validate all of
definitely.
your classification rules before the legacy one expires, just to make sure, because you never know.
Yeah.
Maria added some more context for her question. So she's working on making hundreds of segments for web pages on a regular basis. Is there a way to bulk extract page names from URLs and or bulk import page names into Adobe Analytics, such as from an Excel file?
I think you'd be able to create a classification based off your URL dimension that you capture, and then upload those page names. So then for those values, so then you could get that classification. It depends on the setup of your site and the tracking. So page name is typically a dimension which is automatically populated so it can be the URL. It depends on what you're passing as your page name. If you're passing the full URL string with the query string parameters, and then you're trying to go and break that down into a grouped page name where you just have in the path, I would suggest you using the classifications and classification rule builder, running a little bit of regex to just grab the path after the domain and then before the query string parameter and keep that as your path. If you're generating unique page names per URL, you'd have to look in your tracking, how you're setting that up to find out what is being generated. And in that case, I would have a look at all the possible, try and have a look at all the possible pages that you're collecting, stuff like that. You can export that using Adobe Data Warehouse. You'll be able to download all the values that you've recorded for the time period of your report suite. And well, as long as it hasn't been deleted, that depends on what you've agreed with Adobe, because typically there's, I think it's 18 months. No, not 18 months. It's 2 years and 1 month. So that's 25 months. 25 months is typically your retention period for your data. So you could download all the page names in Adobe Data Warehouse for that and just click get the visits metric or the user metric and export that. Then create a classification file and then re-upload that for those URLs from Excel, which will then you'd be able to use the classification instead of creating individual segments for those URLs. But it depends on your setup, how your page names are created, and what what exactly you want these segments for. If it's just to group the pages together, it's probably best to look at how they are tracked in the first place, because might be easier to change if you're using Launch to track it or something like that. Might be able to be easier to just change the rule in Launch for that sets your page name, so then they're all grouped together.
I'm going to offer a slightly different opinion for this question. Instead of using classifications to extract the page name from the path of the URL, you could also use processing rules. With processing rules, it doesn't do anything retroactively, so it'd only be from when you set it up forwards. But there is an option to just take the page path automatically from sort of the URL that's captured and put it into a new evar or prop. And you can also do like page name, domain, page path, page query string parameters. And I think there's a few others, but I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But in the processing rules, you can do that. And you just sort of like select page path and select what evar or prop you want it to go into. And then you don't have to worry about, writing regex or maintaining a classification to get that page path. It can do it for you. Again, I think processing rules are something that's limited to admins unless you have a user group with permissions for them. But that might be another avenue to explore as well.
Yeah, even I agree. Processing rule would be the better approach, I think, in this particular case, I think.
Yeah,
Maybe you try and let us know, Maria. So we'll be also learning how you use all this.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth exploring both avenues to see which one will work better based on the data that you have coming in, based on your setup, etc. Yeah, because another sort of factor, using classifications doesn't use up a new evar or prop. Using classification, it sort of builds it off of an existing variable, whereas processing rules, it does use a new evar or prop. So it also depends on how many variables you have left available to use, which one you want to do. All right. Are there any other comments on this topic? Another resource, Maria, if you go on the Experience League forums, like the office hours is a great place to ask questions, but we're only here once or twice a month. The Experience League forums have community advisors on it every day, and people ask questions, answer them. So it's another great resource as well. So if you're new to Adobe Analytics, definitely check out the forum. All right. So that was classifications. So the next question that we had pre-submitted, how do we add classifications from AA into CJA? Do any of you have CJA experience?
Let's say I'm working with it. I'm not 100% sure how the process would look like to move over, if there's like a migration out of the box from AA to CJ.
Classifications won't get passed. You'd have to recreate them as derived fields in CJ. So derived fields are similar. Well, it depends on how you're doing it. So if you're doing classification rule builders, you'd have to create it as a derived field. Derived fields are more advanced. You get more options than what you get with just normal Adobe Analytics classification rule builder. So it's a lot easier, a lot more intuitive on how to just generate them. And you can, again, just create a list and say, oh, if this value exists or equals this, then set this. Or you can go and build options and be like, oh, if it's null, or you can use regex, if value contains. There's an entire list of functionality that is available and it's explained on the site. If you are importing classifications, what you do is you create what's called a lookup data set in AEP. So you generate your schema. So this typically you'd use a record schema instead of an event-based one, because you don't typically need the timestamp stuff that comes with the event-based ones. And then you go and import the data into AEP as a data set. Then in CGA, when you're creating your data view, when you're creating the connection, you will connect that data set as a lookup data set. And then you choose which value in the main schema you are going to be connecting it to. And then you'd have to go into the data view section to then just add those values from the lookup. In the left-hand side of the data view admin section, when you're bringing in and choosing your dimensions, there are different folders, like the event-based set dimensions, and then there will be a lookup one. Click on that, and it will list all the values in the schema. And then you can just drag and drop or click add all, and it'll add all from that file in, and then that's how you do the classifications.
Awesome. Dan, do we have to create schema for each classification in AEP?
Yes, it depends on how you're doing it. You can reuse the same classification if the same schema, if it is possible to reuse it. But if you are doing something like, say, a product classification, and you go, right, this is the SKU, so that'll be my main ID, and then adding in your own unique things, and then your next classification is about customer data, and so you then have a different schema set up with the individual values that you're setting up. But if you are reusing it, if you can reuse that schema, it's possible to reuse it for different classifications if it allows and makes sense. Creating a schema consists of like creating field groups. So if you have values which overlap in different classifications, you could create a field group, and then you only have to create that once, and you can add it into the different schemas then as well. But typically, yeah, because the classifications will be different, you'd have to create a different schema for each classification if it's a lookup. If it's a derived field, you don't. So the ones that you do with Rule Builder, you won't have to create a schema for that.
All right. I will just mention Bjorn dropped a couple links in the chat. One is for the Experience League forum, and the second is some documentation around classifications. And Sumit also dropped some documentation links as well. Thank you so much for that. All right. We can move on to the second question that we had pre-submitted. So creating a line graph for a filtered freeform table. Who wants to take this one?
So I can maybe start. The others feel free to chip in. So previously, the line visualization on a filtered table would never really pick up the filtering that you're applying. And this issue should have been resolved by the latest release, 2 weeks ago. And exactly, so we got like it should be fixed by then. What we now in the preparation for this meeting, what we saw is that the actual spark line of the table is somehow sometimes like flatlining. We're not exactly sure what that is, but basically where the number is on the column on the online orders, you basically sometimes you see like a flat line, but you should be seeing like a spark line as well. Now, what you can actually do to kind of like have a look at how the applied filters are actually brought over to the line visualization is like I would potentially say, or you take either select a country, or you can manually like click on the axis to remove the individual entries. Um, Mandy, I don't really see the sparkline at all in is it just the
It might
resolution?
be because it's, yeah, just because it
Oh
was.
no, yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. So yeah, so sometimes it's if you like manually removing items now, you may sometimes see a flat line on in the column header, but the overall line visualization, yeah, exactly like now, is still representing the actual filter content. So don't be alarmed, Adobe is on it, and is hopefully going to be fixed in like a very near future. But yes, you can now filter your tables properly, and both Sparkline and the line visualizations pick it up.
Yeah, this is something that shout out to Eric Matisoff. A few of us brought
Right.
the issue to him a couple months ago, and he worked with the engineering teams to get a ticket put in and get that fixed for us.
And
Because yeah,
just for reference, since the Sparkline is more or less very squeezed, I mean it should match more or less the peaks in the line should match what you're seeing in the Sparkline up there.
it should. Yeah, because previously, if you put a segment on your table or filtered it and then built a visualization, it didn't pick up any of that filtering, resulting in inaccurate graphs. So this fix is very good for a lot of people.
I think that's about that. Any other input from you, Dan or Bala?
No, all good for me.
Yeah, maybe I
Awesome.
can add on the line graph in the settings. If you go on the, if you click on the gear icon, so there are, you can lock it. So many time while we work with the line chart, if you click on somewhere accidentally, this graph will change. So if you click, you just click on that table. Yeah. Also, you can set the maximum, minimum value. Also, you can remove anomalies. Because it is maybe we can create these line chart, this visualization based on the audiences. Some people, if you go and what is anomaly, and then they may have something also. So this is, there are a lot of settings also we can use. Maybe that is the one thing I would recommend. Most of the people won't go and interact with all these settings. Also, you no need to show the percentages. Also, sometime you can remove the add percentages, remove percentages. Um, So I think these settings would be very helpful. I think most of the people, they just rely on the default line chart or any other visualization. Even on freeform table, while you add multiple metrics, so you'll be having a lot of challenges, particularly in terms of space. Yeah, that's few points I just wanted to add.
Nice.
Great. Yeah.
If there's no other comments about line chart, we did just get a question in the chat. We're trying to track AI traffic in Adobe Analytics. I found an article that there's a new dimension called conversational AI tools for tracking AI traffic, but I couldn't find it in Workspace. So that is,
Um,
yeah, it's
Maybe.
under the refer type.
Yeah.
Um,
Referral, you can find a DeepSeek, OpenAI, or ChatGPT. Here you can filter some segments or
Okay.
referral URLs, I think.
All right, so just to call it, this is demo data. So that's why we're not actually seeing it in the table. But if you search for refer type and go into the dimension, conversational AI tools is right there. That came out October 15th as well. So if you look at the release notes, and I'm actually just going to drop the release notes in here. If you don't read the release notes, it's a good idea to check them like at least once every quarter because there's some good information in them. But yeah, this tells you about the refer type dimension item and what all it includes. So that came out October 15th. So if you look for any conversational AI refer type before October 15th, you won't see any data, but you should see data for the last 2 weeks and continuing going forward. But again, ours is demo data, which is why we don't see any.
So I think even now we are able to see under referring domains, we can able to see Grok and all. Maybe you can check on the referring domain. Since this is our demo account, it is not available. Maybe Padmaja thing. Maybe you can check under referral domain. These are already should be available. Yeah. Referring domain now you can filter
For AI.
Grok. Yeah, Grok or no. I think can you put contains Grok? Yeah, Chat GPT, Chat and DeepSeek or something. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Perplexity also coming. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Those are
No.
the same. Okay, yeah,
Uh,
this is demo data, so we're not gonna probably see any in here.
maybe Mandy
What
check.
what some of the AI tools have started doing is they've started adding UTM parameters to the exit links. So if they are coming to the site, I know ChatGPT does it. If you're capturing the entire referrer, even if you're not using UTMs as your tracking code, you can still, if you're capturing the query
Yeah.
string, you can still get create a segment for those.
Yeah, referring domain. I think it is there.
Okay, this is
think in
another demo data suite. I'm just checking if this one has any
There
AI.
you go. It's got ChatGPT there. And it's row 7.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, so this one does have ChatGPT. I don't see the refer type in CJA. I don't know if CJA
I
does it
think
differently.
that component maybe not mapped. That referring domain.
Yeah.
Okay.
In CGA, it might it'll depend on what you've allowed into the
Yeah, in CJ data view.
yeah, in the data view.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, this
but
is
even
another
in
demo
Adobe,
set.
yeah. But Adobe Analytics, we are tracking in the recent days because we are also sensing now a lot of in-depth complex queries. Now people are started to use all the LLM. So I think it's better to track these traffic as well. Also, I think we should be in a position to rank there as well because as a business, we should know what the answer for all those queries. Um, but if we allowed to other people to talk a lot about those topics, then it will be creating so much issues. So I think companies are moving to write in-depth and complex queries related answering content
Yeah.
to address it. In such a way, we can get a lot of traffic from LLM.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the basic question, the conversational AI tools is under the refer type dimension item. Okay, anything else about AI tracking? Okay, so the last,
Maybe
oh, yep.
yeah, Mandy. On another thing, maybe if you want to set the, because this referring domain now in default, Adobe is able to track. You can create this marketing channel rules also to see, to track it under your marketing channel default things, and just to track, because it's nowadays it's emerging a lot. AI is creating so much.
With that, I've read and discussed there are competing theories whether it should be its own marketing channel or whether it should just fall under natural search, because technically it is a natural search. It's someone
Yeah,
searching. So I fall under the category passing it to a natural search, and I feel in the future they are gonna start doing paid search from it. So you then have those two channels which are already existing, natural search and then paid search, which you'd be able to chuck all this data under. But yeah, I agree, it should be set under its own under a marketing channel, but whether it should be set under its own one or under, say, natural search, and I think that's down to the company to decide. Personally, I feel natural search is the better fitting version or better fitting channel for it to fall under, because it's just a lot of people use LLMs as the new Google or new Bing, so it's just a natural search that'll bring someone to the site. But that's just my opinion.
Do
yeah,
we
yeah.
know if in the edge network data streams is or those referrers automatically flag as bot traffic? You know, the score from 0 to 1 would maybe something to check, right? Because you can kind of flag these, and you just have a score and basically on CJA data views you can then filter out those kind of like identified as potential bots. Um, might actually be an interesting one. I mean, ideally, yes, right? But yeah, then you can for sure also argue, is it then like, do you want to have this kind of traffic or not? Completely filter out. I guess every company has to find their own way how it's going to be implemented, or different data views, different settings.
Yeah, if you are trying to find out if it's being tracked as bot traffic, there are these bot dimensions. So you can bring in like bot name, bot page views. I think you can break this down by like referring domain as well. I'm not 100% certain. But there are, bot metrics in Workspace that you can use to try and determine if something is being captured as bot traffic. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So our last pre-submitted question is there a way to get the raw data in Adobe Analytics, like how the backend computes revenue, for example?
Yeah. So, or go ahead.
You can go. If you
Fine,
wrote
fine.
this.
Just quickly. I mean, like, hope I got the question right, but so technically, yes, you can get all the raw data out through data feeds, which basically can run on a, I think, hourly and daily rate, like a export schedule. And let's say how every single like metric is calculated, Adobe is not really disclosing to the world, but many are quite obvious, I think, how they're computed. And then also like if you are basically in terms of like calculated metrics, you can always like click on this eye icon in your workspace to see how it's being calculated if you want to add those.
Just to add to that, with the data feeds, you can, when you're creating it, you have the option to add in whatever dimensions you want. Now, what you will not get though is the classifications. You will have two different versions of your dimensions. So, for example, if you're using EVA 1 for a value, and then you'll have that value turn up in your data feed as eval1, but then you'll also have a value which is named post underscore eval1. Now, that eval1 value is going to be when that eval is set. If you're using, say, processing rules to set those evals, so you're getting data that's coming in from the app, and you're using context data variables to set values via processing rules, you will not see that value in under eval1. You'll see it under the post, which is the post-processing value. You will also see some differences when you're looking at that data, where if you're trying to look at values and you're looking in workspace, you're using eval1, it persists. You're then viewing that data as with events, and you can see it in workspace. You may not be able to replicate that with just that eval. You'd have to use a post one, because the post value is what is then set with it or persisting. There are files that also get sent with data feeds, which will go and help explain what certain things are. So, for example, all the occurrences for individual events are sent, but they're sent in a dimension called the event list. But then they mix in with the current events that are set, and then you've also got your standard events like page views and stuff like that. So all of those are in a single list, comma separated list. And
it also has the instances too.
Yeah, and the instances. And basically you'd have to use the CSV mapping file that gets sent with it to calculate what that actual event is, and see if your event goes. And it's not a standard where you're like, oh, event 1 is equal to number 1 in this list, because you've got, I think, if I check with my other laptops, I've got it because I'm currently working on this now. They're like event 1's like one of the product ones, or maybe page view, but then the actual events, they start at, I think, 100. There's a lot of different mapping things out there, but it's all in the file, and you'll be able to figure out and generate your own mapping document. But there are a couple of other things that you won't be able to get from it. So the browser type and all that information, that'll just be set as a browser ID. And then they've got a classification, basically a classification file, which will be set. Adobe doesn't give it as detailed on the help files, because when you do this data feed, it attaches it with it. So all the files are there and they are unique. And with the browser one, it will go and update it with newer browser IDs and stuff like that. So for the newer versions of the browsers. There's a question: can we download all processing rules from a report suite? If you're using the API, I believe you can. I know there are Google Sheet plugins which will allow you to download them and upload them. ObservePoint has a Google Sheet plugin, which is very good if you are updating a lot of things in the report suite. So if you're doing mass updates to the evals, or if you're just copying a report suite and stuff like that, you can use the the ObservePoint, it's called ObservePoint Labs extension in Google Sheets to do that. And for the API, if you're using the Adobe API, you need to have the Adobe developer privileges in the admin section. But it should be, if you are admin, it should be just in the in the top right-hand menu. If you go under there, and then you'll be able to go to the Adobe developer page where you can go and create your developer API access, and then you can use Postman to run and pull that information.
Just to add some a little bit of context for Dan's earlier point about how classifications are not sent out in the data feeds. This is kind of an infographic from one of the documentation pages about the processing order. And this just sort of shows where your data is collected, the path that it goes through, and then where it gets sort of spit out. So data feeds here happens after all the processing for like marketing channels and EVAR persistence and the processing rules. But classifications happens in a separate process. So that impacts, data warehouse, report builder, and workspace. But the classifications happen after the data gets sent to data feeds. So this is a good, sort of thing to keep in mind is where the different pieces of processing happen in relation to how you're accessing the data.
Yeah, maybe you can share that link in the chat.
Yeah, I will share the link to this page because it has the infographic as well as some explanation. And Dan shared some links for the developer console and the API.
Yeah.
I think
as it seems, the 2.0 APIs don't have the processing rules yet. May come at some point. 1.4 seems to support it still. There's like a view processing rule functionality for that.
I think, did they announce that the 1.4 is being sunset next year?
Next year, yeah, in about, is it late summer next year, I think. So presumably it's going to come at some point, or they're just going to keep pushing it because I think it has been announced to be sunsetted a few times already, but maybe that's just my impression. But yeah, make sure that, or like be rest assured that the functionalities will also be there in 2.1 and 2.0.
Yeah, if you're using the 1.4, August 12th, 2026, it's being sunset. Which is another reason to check the release notes because it lets you know if there's any end of life notices. So like the legacy report builder is ending as well. Yeah. But back to the data feeds, they're a really great resource. The one thing also with using them is if you're using a virtual report suite in Workspace, any segments that you have applied to that, you will need to manually recreate for your data feeds. So for us, we have a virtual report suite that has some custom bot filtering that we've done based on different dimensions. So we've had to recreate that segment in a table using, SQL and whatnot to be able to join. That way, when we look at our data feeds, the numbers actually match what we're seeing in Workspace. So if you're using data feeds sort of right away, just make sure you add any segments that you've applied to your Workspace so the numbers match. Because any segments and custom metrics that you've made will not come into the data feeds automatically. It only includes stuff that's essentially available to everyone. So all of your default events and EVARs, props, etc. But any custom components you've made won't be in the data feeds. All right, we've got about 4 minutes left. Does anyone have anything else that they want to add? All right. So with that, I think we'll end it 4 minutes early unless there's any other comments or questions. Thank you, everyone, for attending this month's office hours. If you haven't joined the chapter for the Champions Office Hours, make sure to join so you get notified of any future events. And we hope to see you next month.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks, Björn. Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thank
Mandy.
you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.